Sun come up, moon go down, world spin round and round. Time for another lesson, grasshopper. Okay, looking into the zodiac more, we're looking at the sign Cancer, and there's always interesting things about each one of these. Let's look at Cancer. Cancer is a sign that does not coincide with the Cancer constellation. In the zodiac, it takes the fourth 30 degrees of the circle and begins the first days of summer. Like Aries is spring. Cancer is a cardinal sign, which means it marks the season in the same way that Aries marks the beginning of spring. Sorry, just like I said. In the ancient times, the constellation of Cancer was positioned at the same place as the most northerly location of the sun, representing the summer solstice. And so when it ran around, that was it. That was in the way that was there. Its name is Latin for crab, and we can hardly recognize the looks of the constellation whenever you look up in the sky, though. It looks more like an upside down Y, usually to us. This, by the way, is the origin of where we get Yahweh from, I believe. He is the one that's in the zodiac. All of these gods were in the zodiacs in one way, form, or another, and with planets and things like that. But it's the dimmest of all zodiacal constellations, located between Gemini and Leo. It's often considered the dark sign, described as a black and without eyes because of its dim appearance. Cancer is often depicted as a crayfish or a crab, and is said to have been the place for the Mesopotamian sun of the south, and was afterwards associated with the fourth month, Duzi, or Duzu, depending on which way, Akkadian or Sumerian, that falls in the June-July area, coming right into the middle of summer, and of modern Western calendar is where they had this. It was also known as the northern gate of the sun by these same Sumerian people. And so you look at myths that they had for Cancer, and you find that the myth of Cancer is probably the shortest myth of all. It speaks about a family mess, of course, as a consequence of one of Zeus's infidelities that results in the birth of Hercules, one of the greatest Greek heroes, of course. Yeah, everybody knows Hercules. Hera, the wife of Zeus, hated Hercules out of jealousy because of it not being her own child, and wanted him gone. And while he was fighting the great Hydra, the seven-headed beast, the serpent of old, all of that story, this is going to be, Orion fighting the serpent in the zodiac. As a result, he smashed the crab with one step. That's the reason it's all dim, of course, and it's mostly the end of the story right there. There's mention of another way to interpret Cancer's zodiac sign too, through the role of the giant crab that Poseidon, or Neptune, the god of the sea, put in charge to keep his nymphs safe, the water nymphs that he had. And he mostly successfully was good in his endeavors doing this. He always seemed to thwart everything, but he got tripped by the vampire squid that he sent to save a couple of nymphs who got away. So they knew about the vampire squids and stuff, and of course this vampiric idea a long time ago. And as a result of the fight with the squid, though, Neptune was crippled, and because of his immortality, he was just in pain forever and caused a lot of anguish. And they say this is what caused him to be a little bit more unruly of a sea after this point, that he was in pain, almost like a lion with a thorn in his paw. It's that same conjecture they give the lion and thorn in the paw as they give with him with his pain forever. So somehow this whole thing catches me a little bit on my own standpoint. I have always been enamored with the sea, and I always like the idea of Neptune and Poseidon and stuff, and the Kraken, and enamored with it to the point that whenever I created my own fish store to sell aquariums and corals and things to people, that I named it Neptune's Cove. And so I've always been enamored with that. And then through me trying to push it way too hard here at the end of, my having the shop open, I ended up disintegrating the disc out of my back, and I've ended up becoming crippled and constantly in pain. And here I am, I'm Neptune, and I've been crippled due to my extra push. You know, the zodiac always tells little myths about things and stuff. So let's look at that real quick. A myth of Cancer shows that someone who is not aware of their true strength, people who are in connection with the sign of the constellation of Cancer, have to deal with a family mess and often prejudice against those who are hated by their mother, the ruler, or their wife. They can also be true patriots, loyal to their queen, as well as overly protective. They are easily convinced to go into battle, even if they are only to pose as collateral damage. This myth points to those who are overly sensitive, wear their heart on their shoulder, but ready to charge onto a much bigger enemy because of their emotions, and their emotions prevail over their logic. If they take on more than they can handle, they could end up getting hurt and even crippled for life. And so this is the moral story of, like, don't go, you know, attacking giants, don't push yourself too far, type things, because look what happened to this god. And I can certainly relate. Here's a depiction of Cancer. You can see the upside down Y effect that does give it a Y. Very interesting effect here with it is 6 stars. So here's your 6. Quite often Cancer is shown with a 6 and a 9 going together, like the 69 kind of symbol going together, which actually showing the 9 is a flipped 6. So you have 666. This is an ancient Gnostic thought, and how it connects to Yahweh, how Yahweh was a god of pestilence, and he caused the sores and cancers of the world, the canker sores. He caused flies biting, that caused sores and welts and boils all over the people of Israel and things. And supposedly there was no cancer before that entity was brought upon the earth, and at that time people really started having sicknesses and disease. I'm sure it happened quite often through caveman times and things like that too, but I'm just telling you what these people related back in the day about how it came about, I guess you would say. And that this beehive cluster of stars is also definitely connected with it. And so now we see more insects, like the insects of pestilence. He sent a wasp forth. They get him. Acubens is known as the stinger. Tarf is the stepping on something. Interesting fact about this degree of angle right here. This is like 51.8, so it's right at the point of what the pyramid would be. And it looks like it's just aiming at you. Here's a coming down of light onto the top of a pyramid. Beehive cluster. This star up at top is known as Decapoda. Decapoda is another insect. You commonly know them as like centipedes. Deca. It's like, there's millipedes and centipedes. Decapoda, it's got 10 feet to it. Makes no sense to have that in there as a name, but it's the ancient name for it. This other star here, his name is Aselius, by the way. So quite a few connections to all kinds of things, and it's the dimmest little constellation people really don't think anything about. Here's another thing that apparently the ancient Babylonians and therefore the Sumerians had correct, that we're having to correct here thousands and thousands of years later, that we've found out an error that we've got. Astronomers have now restored the original Babylonian Zodiac by recalculating the dates that correspond with each sign to accommodate millennia of subtle shifts in the Earth's axis. It says, prepare to have your minds blown, all you people with easily blown minds. I'm fixing to show you the dates for this, but the reason for this change is that they come to find out that the ancient Babylonians had it actually correct, and that over the great cycle that it would end up staying exactly correct, and that through our great cycle we start losing steps over time, but theirs doesn't lose steps. Again, they had a calendar without the leap year effect that we have to go through, and all kinds of changes. If you'll look, they have look at one of my other vids, and look this up online too for verification, of course, that they have an original trigonometry that actually is much better than our own. All these things that we lose that the ancient Sumerians had, and it seemingly out of nowhere. Whenever I was a kid, they said that this was the time when people were rubbing sticks together, and yet they had this knowledge that we're having to revert to now. It seems to be a little conspicuous, to say the least. And here are the new dates that you would have for each corresponding zodiac, and so which sign where you are under, and so on. And it does change mine. It changes mine from an Aries to a Pisces. So, and all of my daughters too, or my first two. And let's see, yeah, it changes my first also, or my third daughter, but the one that has the earliest birth date. Yeah, it changes everything kind of quite a bit. Now they have this Ophiuchus that's down here at the bottom. It's November 29th through December 17th. And you can look up this Ophiuchus as a separate entity. I've got a thing on it. But it's interesting. Now, the Babylonians discarded that Ophiuchus, and because they wanted it to be the sacred 12. So, everything had to be on 5, 7, and 12 back in the days and stuff, even though they were based on 6s and 10s. They knew that this had to be done that way. And so, interestingly, they discarded the 12 and switched it over to this calendar here, but it still kept the dates correct, where you would always roll through these correctly. And this is the one that we've now had to readopt as being our new calendar effect, our zodiacal calendar.